so much for being here today and being part of our webinar series called Family U Chats. My name is Jonathan Tunwar, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Dean for Parent and Family Service. And so I'm really excited that you all are here today. And basically throughout this series, what we're doing is we're meeting with campus partners who are able to kind of tell you a little bit more about their office, what they do. And so today we're talking with Disability Services. And so yeah, I'm happy to introduce Jacqueline Walton. She's one of the access coordinators in Disability Services. And so she's going to spend some time talking to you about some general information about their office, how you access their services, maybe their intake process, and typically how students kind of navigate working with them while they're on campus. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jackie. And then after she kind of spends some time talking about that, then we're going to take some questions. Jackie, I just got a presentation, so if you want to take some time to pull that up, I can give you sharing screen possibilities. Does that work for you? Did you just get that as well?
I didn't get anything.
Okay.
Can you, are
I
you
can share it
able?
for you if that's
Okay,
helpful.
great. Okay.
Okay,
Oh,
give me
she took.
1 second.
Um, well, I just want to say welcome, everyone. And I'm glad you're here. And again, my name is Jacqueline Walton, and I am one of the access coordinators with Disability Services. So what I'll be covering today is basically how to register and what services that we offer through our office. We have a lot of students that are registered with Disability Services, and it's a good thing because students are now able to come to college with the support system.
Can you see that,
So
Jacqueline?
yeah, I
Jacqueline?
can see that. Yeah,
Okay,
I
great.
can. The first thing I think I want to talk about is how to register with our office. So registration takes, you need to fill out the registration form. It's an intake form. It's online. It's accessible through our website, and students can also upload their documentation. Documentation needs to be a letter that's provided by your licensed physician, provider, psychologist, psychiatrist, licensed clinical social worker. Those are all letters, that we can take with the student's diagnosis. A lot of students, a lot of parents will ask me, can they send the 504 and the IEPs? IEPs, we can take the 504 IEPs, but just so you know that IEP recommendations do not carry over to college. It's strictly for K through 12, and so is 504. So when students register with us, we can have the 504 and we can look at it if it has a clear diagnosis. And of course, some of the accommodations will be comparable, but you're under a different law. The K through 12 education is very different. Um, the accommodation students need to, they have to register, students have to seek the support. It's pretty much on the student. The student has to, meet with their professors. Um, Students are, provided an access coordinator in the beginning, so they have someone that they can talk to. After they register students and after they provide the documentation, students will get an email saying that they need to contact our office to meet with someone to talk about how to navigate those accommodations. So students come in, they have a meeting, and we sit down and we talk about how to meet with your professors. Students can send their notifications. Students send their notifications to their professors. It's all confidential. The professor does not get a list of what the the diagnosis of the student. They just get to see what the student is entitled to have. Most students for the various disabilities, it's very it's widespread. Some students get extra time for assignments. Some students get extra time for testing. So all of those accommodations are listed. You can find those in our website if you click on students, and it shows you a list of all of the accommodations that a student could be eligible for. So just to go back a little bit, so we start with the student registering on Clockwork, which is our website. Student does the intake form and then uploads their documentation. Some students have multiple diagnoses, and so they may have multiple documentation. And again, the documentation should be from a licensed provider and stating what the disability is. Assessments are also acceptable if a student has a psych assessment that's already been done or a psych evaluation. If it's not really old, if it's not from the second grade, if it's recent, I would say within 4 or 5 years, the student can submit that as well. So that starts out with the process of students being able to sit down and meet with someone. And then there's the process of sending out the accommodation, the notification forms to your professors. We don't do that during the summer because professors are not on board during the summer. They don't have to. They will be available the first week when the semester starts. Most students will go to all their classes, for the first week, and they'll be given a syllabus. So most professors will either make a verbal announcement or they'll put in the syllabus that if anyone's registered with disability services, please come see me after class or during office hours. And that's the opportunity for students to be able to say who they are. My name is Jackie. I'm registered with disability services. I get extra time, and how would you like me to proceed with my test? Do I take the test with you or do I take it with the disability service office? So all of those things have to be discussed between the student and the professor. The professor could get one of these forms, or they could have 50 people in the class that have accommodations through our office. So it's really important that the students be able to meet with their professor, sort of to put a name with a face. And so we help students, we assist students with how to meet with your professor, how to have a conversation with your professor to make sure that you're clear about what your accommodations are. So the some accommodations, once you come to college, you're under a different law. I'll go back to that, the ADA versus what you got when you were in high school. The ADA, it just says that accommodations have to be quote unquote reasonable. It doesn't say that you get a day for an assignment or you get a week. It just says that it has to be reasonable. So that is definitely a negotiation conversation that students have to have with the help of our office. We have physically accessible classrooms would be furniture, classroom relocation if a student is in a wheelchair and there's a building they need to get to that doesn't have that's not accessible, we would make sure that that classroom is moved to accessible location. Students also have the ability to have a classroom access assistant if they should need one, and that's also provided by our office. The other thing that communication access, students that are deaf or students who have hearing loss, we have caption for those students. We have instructors working with the ASL interpreter, and all of we have the FM system, the mic where the professor wears the mic and the student gets captioning through our communication access. We have an assistant director that navigates that program, that oversees that program, and facilitates that program, working directly with the student and the professor to make sure that the student is getting everything that they need. So that's the communication access piece. And students, when they sign up for disability services, that's where they would indicate on their form, the intake form, that they need these services. And then we try to make sure that we get started with those services sooner rather than later. So we want to make sure that we get that information right away so that we can make sure the student has what they need before classes start. And the next thing is that some students get note taking as an accommodation. Note taking options include either a student taking notes for other students, these are volunteers, and the professor may get up and ask students, like we have several students in the class that need notes. They are not, it is not exposed that who needs notes. The note takers don't know who they're taking notes for. It's all anonymous. It's all on our website through a student portal system that the students learn how to manage when they first sign up with our office. So note takers are there for students who can't take their own notes. The note taker signs up through our office. We don't pay our note takers, but they do get one credit for being a note taker, or either 45 hours of community service hours. So some classes there isn't a note taker available. We do have alternate programs in place of that. Um, we have a program that's called Glean, where the student gets to record the class. If the professor agrees to it, they can go back and listen to the lecture and maybe make some notes. It actually teaches the student the tool of how to take notes. So that's also available through our office, and guidance around that. So exam proctoring. A lot of students take their exams in a different place. They don't take it with the class. The class professors prefer that the students take a test with the class. Not everyone can do that, because if you get extra time, then you may have to take it somewhere else. Some professors will have they say, well, you can take the test in my office, or we have a room down the hall where we can let you take the test. Most professors, I would say 90%, don't have a means to be able to proctor an exam. So, with that being said, students have to make sure that they um, speak with their professors, find out, where do you want me to take my exam? Can I take it with the class? Sometimes the class has to be used right after that class, or the student may have another class right after that class, or the professor may have other obligations after that class. So then the student has to make arrangements with the exam center. So we have an exam center. We have two exam centers on campus. The proctoring center, we have student proctors. It's open Monday through Fridays from 8 to 5. We're there on Tuesdays and Wednesday and Thursday till 7. And final exams are from 8 to 8. Now, the most important thing with exams that often gets a lot of confusion around is that the students have to let the professors know, if where you're going to take your exam, when you're going to take it, and the details around the exam. So, there has to be a three-way conversation that is with the professor, with the student, and also with the exam center coordinator. All three people have to be on the same page as far as when are you taking your test, if you're taking it at a different time because of scheduling conflicts. So that has to be communicated. Sometimes the student shows up at the exam center and the test is not there, or either the exam is there but the student is not there. So that is something that definitely has to be communicated, and it has to be clear from the beginning of, if you're not taking it with the class and you are getting extra time, how are we going to arrange this? So it has to be prearranged. You couldn't go to the testing center today and say, I have a test tomorrow. The testing center needs to know at least a week in advance to make sure that they have a seat for the student, and make sure they have the test and the professor is sending the exam so it's there when the student needs it. If it's a night exam and we're not open at night, we don't proctor night exams, the student has to get permission through an email to take the test at a different time. So when our proctoring center is open. Um, so that's all about exams through our office. Absences and extensions. Currently, all students with accommodation for absences and extensions are informed by our staff to speak with their faculty to obtain guidance and clear expectations. Some students have that as an accommodation where they may have to be out if there's a test during that day that they happen to have a test. They get the accommodation allows them to be able to take the test at a different time, or have a makeup test. And so, if students are going to be out longer than that, they really should let the professors know ahead of time that they're going to have to be out. Attendance is very important. Some professors really count attendance as participation, as the grade for participation. that the student has to be there. So if a student's going to be out for any length of time, I would say they should talk to their professors to let them know that they, because of their disability, that they may have to be out several times throughout the semester for different reasons, like medical or doctor's appointments or treatments that they have to have um, during the school year. That's on absences and extensions. And remember, it's all case by case, student by student. Everyone's situation could be different, but it has to be reasonable. So, FERBA, your student can elect to provide you FERBA access, but it is their decision. We will work with your student. You can provide us with information, but it's not our responsibility to include or update parents. Please make a plan with your student regarding your expectations, and we can be contacted for any information. If you have any information about the FERBA access, you can contact our office, and we'll be more than happy to sort of give you the update on that and and instructions on how to do that. Moving right along, I think we're having a little technical difficulties here. So I think I've covered
Yeah, that
just
was the
to
last slide.
Okay, that was okay, great. So just to give a recap, registering with our office is submitting, doing an intake form that the student does and submitting documentation. And then after that, every student will receive an email saying that, please contact our office, notifying the student to contact our office to make an appointment. Students have to make their appointments. They can make appointments two ways with us. They can do it the old-fashioned way or the old school way by just calling the office, speaking with the receptionist, and saying, I'd like to make an appointment with one of the access coordinators, and they can look at our schedule and fit the student in. Students can also go to our website, and the student portal has a link there where the students can actually make an appointment, and they can look at our schedules also and put themselves in that time slot that's available. So that's registration. Documentation that's accepted would be, from a licensed physician saying what the diagnosis is, and it has to be from a licensed provider. So, and again, IEPs and 504s are just for K through 12. We can use, if the 504, the IEP has a clear diagnosis, we can use that. But some of the services on the 504 and the IEPs don't necessarily transfer to college. Um, so I just, let's see.
There's a question for you. Uh,
Sure.
so it says, how long does it take for students to get email to set up a meeting for accommodation? Their student already sent in the request, but hasn't heard anything yet.
Well, usually it doesn't, usually the process takes about a week for students. The turnaround is really quick. We have an intake coordinator that submits that looks at the documentation, looks over the intake form, communicates with the student usually within a week. So if they haven't heard anything, they should probably reach out to our office by calling our main number, which is the 413-545-0892. And we have a receptionist that's always answering the phone, and they'll be able to assist them further with that. But the turnaround time is usually about a week. They should have gotten an email from our office saying to call the office to schedule an appointment to meet with someone to have a one-on-one appointment. Those appointments can be by phone, they can be via Zoom, or they can be in person. So usually during the school year, students will come in. During the summer, I've met a lot of students online via Zoom, and I've met talked to a lot of students by phone.
So there are a couple other questions, families. You can use the Q&A feature to submit your question, and I will make sure that Jacqueline hears them. And so the next question says, if my student is ill, do they contact your office to have a note taker for the classes that they miss?
So the note taker, that has to be that's a service that has to be implemented in the beginning of the semester. It's not just on a fly. Like if a student is sick one day and the student didn't originally have a note taker as an accommodation, then they wouldn't. We just don't have note takers just waiting around, just saying, I'm going to be available for whoever needs one today. It's sort of the service sort of doesn't work like that. The accommodation, the student asks us for a note taker in the beginning of the semester when they come in and I sit down and meet with students. It's, will you be needing a note taker? And the student says yes. Then the student, we try to, make sure that the student has a note taker for the semester, but it's not something that we can do um, just on a, not on a, just as a pop-up. We can't do it. We have to have the accommodation has to be, it should be something that we would implement during the beginning of the semester. And usually we can't just have a note taker, just requests can't be just like the day of.
Mhm.
I hope that answers that question.
I think so. The next question says, if a student is under 18 at the beginning of the semester, do they have to wait to be 18 to complete the FERPA waiver?
I don't have a direct answer, definitive answer for that. Um,
I can answer that
I,
question if that's helpful.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Great,
for
thank you.
FERPA as actually attaches based on the fact that your student is entering post-secondary education is actually not about their age. And so they don't have to be 18 to fill out the FERPA waiver. They can waive those rights at the age of 17. So the next question says, do you have any executive functioning coaches on staff? Or do you recommend or have you worked successfully with students in the past? Or any
That's
who
a
have worked? Yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. We have some students that have a diagnosis of executive functioning disorder. And also, maybe organization is something that they need to work with. So, fortunately, we do have grad students that work with our office. The program is called the Learning Specialist Program. We have about 10 grad students that work with students one-on-one. And so if students need that type of service, I encourage students to fill out, there's a form that students have to fill out, and then they are able to meet with someone at least an hour, up to an hour once a week. They help with organization, they help with timelines, they help with strategies around assignments. What they don't do is they don't tutor. We don't have tutoring. They're not versed in any particular subject. These grad students may be in a master's program or in a doctoral program, and they work part-time with our office to assist our students with one-on-one with organization. So that is something that we do offer, and it's free, and it's through our office, and the only thing it takes is students filling out a form. um, Mainly what they need to have, the coordinator needs to have is their schedule so that they can match the student with a grad student so that they can have someone that they can check in with at the time that the time is available for the student. So
All right. So the next question says, how long does it take to get services after an evaluation is submitted? My student had an eval in the third grade and will have the updated report this month. Will the accommodation be available by the beginning of the semester?
yeah, accommodations should start the day of. Students should come in, if they're seeking accommodations, they should have connected with our office, met with someone from our office to sit down and discuss what type of accommodations are you looking for. And that can be an ongoing conversation because students may come in wanting extra time for tests, like time and a half, and then somewhere throughout the semester, the students find out that's not enough time and they need maybe double time. So accommodations is an ongoing conversation. Students are getting accommodations from the day that the semester starts. Students are encouraged to send notifications to their professors via our website, and then to have a conversation with the professors. Those accommodations are noted right away. Now, it may take a little while to get a note taker. It may take a week or so. You have the airdrop period where most professors want those accommodations, within the airdrop period, which is a week. So students should be able to get services right away. Tests don't happen right away, so tests don't happen the week of when school starts. So students will have time to set up testing arrangements with the testing center and their professors. The learning specialist who will meet with students one-on-one for organization, that usually starts about a week, about maybe the second week of classes.
All right, the next question says, my student completed the FERPA waiver, probably Inspire. Do they need to complete a separate one for the Disability Services Office?
We don't have a separate one. We do have on the intake form if the student has any restrictions of who they don't want us to communicate with, as far as, please don't talk to my aunt, or please don't talk to, anyone else. So they have a chance to list that they have a chance to put that information in on the intake form.
The next question says, how do you determine what accommodations a student will receive?
So what I do, and what most of the office, what we do is we have a conversation with the students. So we look at, of course, we look at the student's documentation before we meet with them. Hopefully, you've already have had a good idea of what the student might be grappling with, or what the challenges are for the student. But the main how to find out about what accommodations are appropriate is to sit down and have a conversation with the student. What were you receiving before, when you were in high school? What accommodations do you think are going to be helpful for you? And like I said, for the one of the other questions, this is an ongoing process, because situations may change. The student may find out that, oh, I didn't think I needed extra time for assignments, but now I do need it. So those are ongoing conversations that the student can come in and meet with, one of the access coordinators to talk about what their needs are. And the needs may change. They may say later on that I didn't think I needed this, but now I think I do need it.
Great. The next question says, can I send my child the IEP or 504 to a disability services counselor to find out whether my child is eligible for services?
Yeah, like I said, we can take the IEP and 504s. It usually tells us and gives us a clear diagnosis. The 504 and the IEPs usually have recommendations of what accommodations are going to be appropriate for the student. But some of the recommendations, or some of the services that students were receiving, is questionable. Doesn't always transfer to college.
Okay, great. So the next question says, how does a student know which accommodations they are eligible for? My student is transitioning from a 504 plan, which allowed for extended times on tests and assignments, class notes, and also a reference sheet for memory-based exams. How do they know which accommodations will be allowed by each professor?
So the student determines what accommodation is going to be helpful for them. So, for instance, extra time for assignments, those are very basic accommodations that most colleges will offer, and that's what we offer. Extra time for assignments, extra time and a half for tests, double time on tests. We have a list of all the accommodations on our website. As far as having a reference sheet, that's something that's a little bit tricky. They really have to get that approved by the professor. Some students do ask for a word bank, especially for classes where there's a lot of information, where there's a lot of wording information. Students will sometimes ask, can they have that as an accommodation? I will add that sometimes on the form that is sent to the professors, that the student sends to the professors, but they need to have a conversation with the professor. And of course, they need to get approval from the professor.
Okay, great. Our next question says, can students get additional assistance when moving in, i.e. early move-in, access to an elevator, things like that?
Yeah, that's provided through Residential Life. I don't have all of that information, but I know that there's a whole team of people that to assist students with moving in. Elevated access for students that have mobility concerns. There is elevated access for that. So that's something that's a Residential Life question, and Res Life would be able to give you a lot of information on moving in and how that process takes place.
Yes, and we have a whole webinar coming up about move in. That is happening next week on Wednesday at noon. So join us next weekend at noon, and you can learn more about move in and that process and ask that specific question. So you can join us then. The next question is your department involved with dining alerts for students with food allergies?
Absolutely. So we have dietitians on campus. I just got a notification from one a dietitian of how students can go in and they have to meet with the dietitian. There's a way that they can do it through their website. I have all the information. Our office has all the information on how students can meet with the dietitian to make sure that the dietary needs are met or any restrictions, if they're gluten free or if they have severe allergies. So they definitely have, when they meet with the dietitian, they will be able to guide them on how to make sure that they get what they need and don't have the problems of allergies, of a repercussion of their allergies because of something that they got in their with eating that they shouldn't have had. So uh, we have lots of students coming in with allergies, and they work very closely with the dietitians and the dining hall service people, the person, the chef, and they are very good about helping students that have specific dietary restrictions.
All right. So our next question says, my student has a new diagnosis of attention deficit disorder. So she has not learned how best to cope with this. They prefer not to take medication. So are you all available to help her navigate this as she enters UMass?
So we're here to assist students with accommodations and what type of accommodations are going to be helpful for them. If students have therapeutic needs, then they may have to meet with a counselor, a licensed clinician. We are not clinicians, so the student may have to meet we do have an office on campus that the Center for Counseling and Psychological Health. I think students can meet. I have a one-on-one appointment with them. We mainly deal with how to navigate your accommodations with your professors and empower students to be their own advocates. And so that's the main role of our office is to assist students with becoming their own advocates and knowing and being able to use their services so that they can be successful. So counseling is not something that we do, but there are plenty of information about counseling on campus through the office of the Center for Psychological Health.
Mhm. So the next question says, can you talk more about the meeting with disability services? Can you tell us what it will be like, how the student can best prepare, and what's the process after the meeting?
Okay, so when a student meets with me for the first time, of course, I introduce myself. I want to hear from the student. How are you doing today? What is it that what is it? What accommodation do you think you need? And so we just have a conversation. The meeting is usually 45 minutes long. Student gets to talk about maybe some of the challenges that they've had academically, and I make sure that in a lot of the case, a lot of our access coordinators, it's really difficult to just give the student all this information the first day they have an appointment. So it usually has to be follow-up appointments. Okay, so these are your accommodations. This is the notification form. This is what you're going to send to your professor. And then maybe the next meeting we might follow-up meeting. We talk about how to schedule your exams. So the student doesn't have all this information in one sitting and be able to take that information and use it, it's kind of counterproductive. So the first meeting is just to get an introduction a first meeting is how to how to use your accommodations and how to relay those accommodation services to your professors. And then after that, it's just follow up on everything else, like how do we schedule our exams? How do I get my notes? So, those are ongoing meetings that we would have, like, you just don't have one meeting and you know everything and you'll never need to come to us again. Students come to our office. It's an ongoing and it's a process. Everything is a process. So students, part of the process is students learning, because students don't know what they don't know, and they're not expected to know all these things when they first come in. So this is something that we walk the students through in terms of how to navigate your services with your professors.
All right, so the next question says is my incoming first year student uploaded the MD paperwork and was told to call the office 5 days before the semester, so late August. Should they call sooner?
Yeah, I would say they should have an appointment probably late August, early September. I wouldn't encourage the student to wait until September to schedule an appointment. Our office is, we have a lot of significant, about 10% of the general population of students in general identify as having some type of disability. So with that being said, if a student waits until September to make an appointment, if they call in when school starts, they could be waiting until my schedule is usually packed the first month. They could be waiting until October before they get down and actually, before they come in and actually get to see someone. So I always tell students about the second week in August is when you should be calling the office to schedule a first time appointment. And that first time appointment preferably should be in person, but it can be Zoom or it could be via Zoom. But the first appointment should be you know, close to the week of school starting. Professors will want those accommodations, notifications when school starts, usually before the air drop period. So I know I would not wait until September to make the appointment. I always suggest that students make their appointments sometime, maybe mid-August is when they want to call the office to schedule.
Okay. The next question says, "As my student has hearing loss, they are not able to make an appointment until after school starts. So can they use an old hearing test and their 504 plan? And does the department need to tell the professor?" Need to tell professors, or does the department inform the professors of hearing loss? So kind of who does that notification piece as well?
So, sure, the student can submit old documentation. We would never turn anyone away, even if the student didn't have the proper documentation or the documentation that's needed. We would never deny the student. We even give students a chance if students don't have testing or they don't have the adequate, documentation. We give students a chance to get that, and we usually give students at least a year to present documentation that's up to date or whatever. And in the meantime, we would offer services to the student. The student that has hearing loss right away would be connected with our communication access director. And so that person would communicate with the student and the professor. And that usually takes place very early on, if not before the semester starts. So if a student has hearing loss, you have a student with a hearing loss, that I urge you to, to make an appointment sooner than later. That we should be doing probably at least 2 weeks before the semester starts to make sure that, the services are going to be available when the student starts, when the semester starts, rather.
And can you talk about what services are available for students who are experiencing hearing loss?
Well, students will definitely need to have some kind of captioning services depending on what they've used in the past. A lot of students use the FM system. Students will definitely have note takers. If we didn't have volunteers for note takers, our office would provide a note taker. Extra time for tests. So probably extra time for assignments. Those would be some of the accommodations that would be available to them and should be available to them at the beginning of the semester.
Okay. That was all the questions that we have, unless folks are still submitting some in the Q&A. But Jackie, is there anything that you, or Jacqueline, anything that you would want them to remember based on our conversation today?
Well, I guess I want to reiterate that the students have to have a conversation with the professors. They have to, and they can do it via email or in person, but the students have to, meet with the professors to say, this is what I get. This is I have extra time for assignments. So, earlier the better. I Some students come in November, and the semester is almost over. I would say the most important thing is to get signed up with our office right away and learn how to use those services right away and not waiting. Accommodations will not be retroactive. So if a student didn't turn in something in September and they're asking for assistance in November for that, it's going to be too late. So I would say the most important thing is for students to meet with our office early on. Don't wait until the mid-semester to get help. Even if you don't use your accommodation, to have them in place there's no harm in having those accommodations in place, even if you don't or even if you don't want to use them, or you want to use them for finals or midterms. That is acceptable, but I would say to get connected with our office as soon as you can, as soon as school starts.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and families, thank you for joining us. As I said, please join us next week for our move-in webinar. If you've not been able to register for that, we are going to offer another session. I'm aware that that one is full, and so working with that presenter to secure another time so that we can offer that to you all as well. And so I hope to see you all next week. Thank you so much for your time again, Jacqueline. Thank you, families, for coming, and
Thank you.
have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.